Alrighty, folks. Hello and welcome to another episode of Getting in Trouble with John Theodore. I am your host, John Theodore, twitch.tv/John_A_Theodore, made deliberately difficult to discourage and dissuade the trolls that still somehow manage to find my channel. With us today, we have Twitch viewer Demi_OUS. Any other, do you want to share your name on iRacing, anything like that? Any other stuff that folks can identify you by, or any platforms you want to pump or share about get out there before we just dive into it?
Well, my iRacing name is Christopher Brooks 5, and
Okay.
just my Twitch is the same thing as it is of viewers.
Good deal. What's any story behind the Twitch name?
When I first started doing like YouTube stuff, it was like a long time ago when I was like 12 or 13. I was using my gamer tag, which was originally Dragon Gaming 88, but then I wanted to make it something like really unique, so I made up this word. It was Demius is originally what it was, but everybody called it Demius, so I just changed it to Demi.
Gotcha.
And then, yeah.
And here I thought it had something to do with the OU Sooners.
No, I.
That's why I always
clue
ask, because like it's always interesting to me how folks come up with their names, and like no matter what I try to guess on, 90% of the times it seems like I get the reference wrong.
Yeah, I don't even know why I put the OUS. I had a reason for it before, but I forget it honestly. I just had it
Yeah.
since.
Well, I mean, if you're calling yourself Demias, then that's important and makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's originally what it was.
Yeah. My original gamer tag was the super cool JT Money 07.
Sounds like a very MySpace name.
Oh, it was super MySpacey. Yeah, it was, JT Money, which is what, every not cool kid in middle school would refer to themselves as. And then 07 was my graduating year in college.
Ooh.
Yeah, because I couldn't just get JT Money because some other really cool kid already had that one.
Well, numbers are always better in the username, anyways.
I honestly, like, I've always tried to, especially like ever since, I always try to avoid as much as possible having to put numbers into a username. I always try to get something that's unique that I don't have to put some kind of number at the end of it.
So yeah, whenever I started YouTube, I always like, for some reason, I was like, I need to have a number. I need to have a number. What will be my number? And then I chose 88 because of Dale Jr.
That's a good one. I always like Dale. Big Dale Jr. fan. I mean, like, especially like as a NASCAR fan, like of all the when you're picking a driver, the guy's content, of character, integrity, all that stuff factors into it. In my estimation, there are few there are, and not just in NASCAR, but there are just few public figures who are as much of a just like stand up, straightforward, honest guy as Dale. You know.
Yeah. Dale's so nice about it too.
Exactly, that's the thing. He's nice, he's humble, he's genuine, and he has, especially in racing, which is a sport where there is very much the attitude of get away with anything you can, and if you get away with it, it isn't cheating. It's like he clearly doesn't seem to be of that mindset or to take that approach. And so, like, and also he's got every reason and every excuse to not be a humble guy. So it's like I give him all the more credit that he could have gone any number of ways with how he developed and matured and stuff like that, and he's chosen to go in a way that's very admirable. So I've always respected the heck out of him for that.
He's like
he's the reason why I run the skeleton gloves.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. I was like, is that a Dale Jr. thing? Or?
That's a Dale Jr. I mean, he was the one who originated that. Plus, so like it's a Dale Jr. thing. Plus, like they do look really cool.
Yeah.
they just look cool. So I'm like, if you go back actually to my super early videos, I was using just some normal mechanics wear gloves. And then so as I started doing it, I'm like, well, I like wearing gloves, and especially after getting the Fanatic wheel, I was like, I got the Alcantara rim because it is nicer, and I'm like, I want to protect this thing. I just put a big investment down on it. So I went on Amazon looking for gloves. It's like, well, if I'm gonna have gloves anyway, I may as well take the opportunity, since they're going to be on camera, to make them as cool and as fun as they can possibly be. And as a NASCAR guy, who, what is cooler than the Dale Jr. skeleton pattern?
Right, right.
So like it became a fairly obvious choice. Plus, blue and white. I'm half Greek on my dad's side. Like all the family on my dad's side. My dad's 100% Greek. It's all Greeks on that side of the family. So, and on top of that, my mom's favorite colors have always been blue and white. Like everything in the house, if she could, like she'd get blue and white, she'd repaint it blue and white, everything. So it's like with that influence, like blue and white was a very obvious choice for me as well.
Yeah, so it just kind of like fit together really well then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, that's yeah. And that's like I've kind of leaned in on that and embraced that as my color scheme and stuff like that, with the obvious exception of when I'm running the Corey Busch car, in which case I run her colors, which are purple and white.
Yes, it's kind of. My colors are like yellow and black because when I was growing up, I was a huge Steelers fan. Not so much no more. I watch football a lot. But my car and I.
When I was a huge Rusty Wallace fan, so yellow and black was always my colors growing up too, man.
Yeah, that throwback car was it Brad? He raced last year, I think it was. Might have been 2 years ago. I can't remember, but I actually like that car.
Which one? I've raced so many cars in the past couple of years now. Now that I'm running for Beast, I race very few different schemes.
I'm talking about the one that Brad ran at Darlington.
Oh yeah, the Rusty Wallace throwback that he ran and won with at Darlington. That was the one that he actually won with. That was the 1990 scheme. That was Rusty only ran that for 1 year. That was the one, and that's the only. That car was the only crown jewel event Rusty ever won in his career. Was the 1990 Coca-Cola 600. He never won a Daytona 500. He never won a Southern 500. He never won an Brickyard 400. And he never won the Talladega race that was part of the Winston Million / No Bull 5 thing. The one crown jewel event that he did win one time was he won the 1990 Coke 600, and it was in that same paint scheme that Keselowski won the Southern 500 with.
My favorite classic paint scheme is the '87 Davey Allison.
I love that one.
Yeah, every chance I can like paint that up in any game, I do it.
Mm-hmm.
That is my all-time favorite.
Yeah, we got Spitz in the chat here. It says kind of crazy that Rusty never won the Southern 500. It is, although looking like Darlington was never one of Rusty's strongest tracks. Interestingly enough, like I always remember that he struggled at that track for whatever reason. Like he was a really good short track guy. He was clearly a really good road course guy, and he had a handful of the speedways that he was good at. But Darlington, he never quite seemed to get comfortable there.
That track's a different beast, though.
It is. I love that track. I'm so like that one was circled as like for a long time as that is the one track that I want to knock off and get a win at. And I was able to get that win in A fixed there earlier this year. So now the one that I've got circled that I've still never won at that I really want to win is Charlotte. That's the next one on my list, and I specifically want to win the Coke 600. So I'm going to be really putting a lot of effort into that this year.
I'm just trying to get out of D class.
I hear you, man. How long have you been on iRacing for? How long have you been on the service?
Since March.
Since March. Okay, well, that's not too bad then. 2 months, I think it took me about that long to get out of or to get from D to C. David Weishart, who was our guest last time on here, says he won the All-Star race, but the All-Star race is not a crown jewel event. The All-Star race is the All-Star. That's a totally different deal.
Yeah, so many different rules and now different packages that they're running there too.
Yeah. Spitz asked, wasn't my coverage photo of your finish? I'm not sure. That I did have the background photo on my desktop was the finish from last year's Coke 600 where I finished third place for a long time, and I think that does feature prominently in my YouTube dashboard array as well. That one was a big deal. That was the coverage photo right now. The background photo right now on my desktop is my NIS win at Auto Club Speedway, which is definitely my biggest win to date.
So far, I've only got one win, but I don't know if I really want to count it because it isn't in the weeks counted category. They're just kind of like different runs that I had. It was at Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, look, on this service, honestly, unless you're one of the ridiculously quick guys, wins are really hard to come by because they do a really good job of balancing the field, so you've always got good competition to run against. Again, like I said, until you get so ridiculously good that you can drop into a lobby where you're just outclassing everyone else, it's hard to get wins, man. So, my motto is to, like, work hard for them and enjoy and celebrate anyone you get any way you get it, unless you did something that you know in your heart was dishonest to get it. But, other than that, a
I
win's a
have
win.
the one win. It wasn't a dishonest win. The one guy though, he lagged out. So like I don't like crediting myself for it.
I got a win that way at Stafford. I was running second, and I had worked pretty hard to get up to second. Leader was like half a lap in front of me and dropped out on the final lap of the race. That was a pretty funny one too, because I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna finish second. And then I get on the back straight, it's like, wait, what? I'm first? What? My reaction, if I do say so myself, was pretty funny on that one. It was a pretty entertaining moment.
I forget how it went down. I know I was really close to this guy though, so I'd like if I had the chance, I probably would have passed him. But I was finding it really hard to pass at Michigan on the bottom at least.
Yeah,
So
passing at Michigan is that in the D car in particular can be really tough, especially late in a run when the tires wear out. The top line gets such an advantage coming off the corner.
oh man, you should have heard me when I was racing. They'll try to get under me. I'm like, that's not gonna work. And then they'll try to get on my outside. I'm like, nope,
Yep.
not doing that either.
Yeah. Seal off that wall, make them hit you, which carries its own risk. But yeah. Yeah, at the end of the race, you make that car as wide as possible, and what happens, happens.
Yeah, I was actually wishing it would get tight at some points because we were getting some pretty loose exits.
Mm-hmm.
The only
So let's see. We're going to transition a little bit here. And I think we can actually smoothly transition this into the main topic you expressed interest in discussion beforehand, which was talking about gamer communities, because iRacing itself is a gaming community that has all kinds of different elements. Was there a particular piece of gaming the area that you want to discuss in the gaming community thing, or
yeah, like the toxic kind of communities because I play a lot of games that have those like toxic communities.
right?
Like
Why do you think that online gaming is such a natural breeding ground for toxicity? I guess is a
because there's really no like backlash for it unless you're like a big streamer or something. You don't really uh you don't get a lot of backlash for it.
That's
So you
true.
can
Yeah, yeah. Like right. I mean, someone even is in as small a streamer as in my position. If I do something that if I wreck a guy or if I just start going off on a tirade, I'm gonna get hit. But yeah, if you're just some anonymous person that isolated that doesn't have a community that you're accountable to or responsible for setting example for, there really is very little consequence to being a toxic figure online. Um,
I like what Lugnut just put because you can yell at somebody and not get punched in the face.
Yeah. So that's a common, I think, fallback position. And while there is some truth that, being face to face with someone definitely has a tempering effect with how you're going to deal with them, I am not a huge fan of the idea that the threat of violence is the only thing that keeps human beings, or that incentivizes human beings treating each other with respect and decency. Um, it is clearly a motivator, or it obviously is something that is has a tempering effect on a lot of folks, but I don't think that that's the only reason why normal everyday discourse isn't that way. I think that and I also want to push back on the idea that as Spitz says, that most people are inherently, I'll just say, crappy, as he put it. I don't agree with that. I think that most people
Yeah,
actually are pretty decent. I think that the people who are committed, or who choose to be toxic, do so in such a way that it sort of drowns out all the positive folks who are kind of just on there to hang out and have a good time. If you're, for example, like if we're in an NIS fixed race, I was in 2 races at Kansas that had over 30 drivers in them, right?
yeah,
I would say that, and the overwhelming theme of both of those races, what the thing that sticks that sticks in my memory about them, and that was the featured point of both videos, was toxic behavior by guys losing their tempers and stuff like that. But that was the action of 2 to 3 guys maybe in each race out of 30, so less than 10% of the field in that race left an overwhelming impression of toxicity when looking back. That was the impression that it's left, that it leaves. You can run 500 laps in a race and have all of them be clean, but the one lap where you bin it is going to be the one that you remember.
yeah. See, I think everybody is very understanding, but I feel like I'm a very understanding person as well. Rockingham a couple of weeks ago, I took, I think, third place away, and this guy was just a just honest mistake. I back out of the gas just a little bit earlier into the entry, and he just put me into the wall. He got on the mic, he said he was he's sorry and stuff, and I forgave him. But
Mm-hmm.
then you get those people like a couple of weeks ago, I was at Bristol, and this was a very rookie mistake. Like I said, I've been playing since March. Very rookie mistake. And I felt so bad because it was the leader, and he was whipping everybody's butt.
Mm-hmm.
But we were coming out of 4, and I don't know why, but I just came down, and he was there, and I put him into the wall. And the only thing I could say to them after was like, "Dude, I am so sorry." Like,
I think we all. I think every single one of us, and like it. And again, it's not necessarily every single one of us when we're starting out on iRacing, but all of us when we first start out and we're learning what the size of the car is and how close to the wall you can actually run, make those kind of mistakes. Because when you're just starting out, you're going to be slower than the leader, unless you're
yeah,
some kind of prodigy. It's like, or you have some prior experience before coming in. No one is super quick the first time they sit in a race car, be it real or virtual. You learn. And part of that learning process is making big mistakes. And that's the thing, is like I've tried to remind myself and have a much better, I think, understanding when I drop down and run those D class races, is like, this is going to be a different level of competition than what I get up in A class. When you're racing
yeah,
with guys with a D-class license or in a D-class series, you cannot expect them to have the same level of car control that the guys in a top or a second split NIS field are going to have, or even third split, which I probably now, with my way that my I rating's been tumbling lately, I'm down in third split sometimes. But you even then, you just can't have those guys with a D, you never know. Like if that's a D class, it's possible that they've been at a D class license for a year, or they were at C and they've just had a bad run of it and knocked back down, or it's like it could be literally their first race out of rookie in a new car that they're unfamiliar with. You just can't expect those guys to have the same car control ability. They're learning and that's what that series is for. That is a learning series. If you, as an experienced driver, choose to go down into a series that's meant for people to learn, you have to accept that there's going to be people who are going to make mistakes, and you're going to have to just accept that as part of the things that you're going to have to deal with going in.
Yeah, we like it all went like, I thought it went smoothly afterwards, because I told him like, yo, dude, I'm so sorry. And he didn't say anything back, which I thought was weird at the time, but I was like, maybe he's just little PO. I actually hopped off for a week though. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I've learned that as the more experienced guy, a lot of times, like if you can't bring yourself to say, hey, dude, no worries, it's best to just not say anything. You're only going to embarrass yourself. You're only going to make things worse for you.
Yeah, but like, I think I got off for like a week or two because I was moving, and I hopped on iRacing the one night, and I wasn't gonna do a race, or maybe I can't remember, but I saw the little green thing blinking at the bottom right next to like the online racers and stuff. I'm like, oh, what's this? A whole new private message or something. So I open it up. It's this guy who I took out, and I was like, oh, maybe I figured I was about to have. I was about to get chewed out or something. But man, he just went all out. He's like, I'll try to find it. I won't read it word for word.
Did he go all in on you in a negative way or a positive way?
Oh, it was negative. It was
super negative? Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, sorry, won't take it back. I'm like, man, I don't know what you want me to do then.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, dude. You made an honest mistake. You owned up to it. If that's not good enough for him, it's a virtual car. It didn't cost you anything in a material manner. Especially if you're an A-class licensed guy going down and racing in a D-class series, that literally didn't cost you anything.
That's what I was so confused about, because I'm like, I kind of did some research. I started like digging into him. Like, he's got a high class. He is a Twitch streamer. Again, I won't say who it is.
Oh, now I really want to know, dude. Now I really want to know.
I'll private message it to you later, but I don't want to send some bad vibes towards him, because he could be honestly a good guy in real life. He could have just been PO'd in the moment. But we all are at some point. But no, he was just like jumping on me saying I'm a trash driver. I'm like, I always thought I raced clean. My whole thing is like, if you're faster than me and you're trying to get by for like 5 or 6 laps, I'll let you go.
Yeah. My response to that always is, yep, you're right. That was a bad mistake. I am terrible. I'm not pretending to be any better than I'm well aware of how bad I am at driving a race car.
Yeah, but it just got me. Yeah, but it was like, it was Bristol in the D class.
Oh, man.
I was already taken out 5 or 6 times. I was running 5th, so I was racing a little bit like more aggressive with my car, not the drivers, but with the car,
right,
trying to push it more, because I figured if I took it down pit road, I'd be on there for a couple of minutes, lose a lot of spots. So I was like, well, we can try to keep this thing in the top 10 so I can save that I rating. I may lose a tire, I may lose an engine or something, but we can try. But I know for sure if I fix the car, we will go down a couple laps. So I was already struggling with my car. And like you said, it's my first time at Bristol, and I'm still trying to get used to the A car, or the D car. So I don't know like how close I can get to the wall or not.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just like, it's the D class, it's Bristol. Even if it wasn't the D class, it's Bristol in the first place.
Yeah, no, and Bristol's tough. It's so fast, and you're always just on top of one another. It's just tough to stay out of each other's way sometimes. David and Rachel in chat, hi guys, by the way, are making some really good points, which is just, especially when you're starting out, but even now, honestly, like one of the biggest problems I've been having is I'm not practicing enough. Practice makes a huge difference. I've noticed such a huge difference for me where, it's about just at least getting enough practice to the point where I'm comfortable driving the car around the track, so that during the race, driving the track is natural, and I can actually focus on racing, because you can't really focus on actually racing people if you're still
Learning how to drive the
struggling
car.
with just getting the car around the track consistently. You got to have that to feel almost as natural as breathing, and then you can really focus on actually racing against your competition.
See, I've done that with basically every race so far except for Richmond. I've
Mm-hmm.
only practiced Richmond in the trucks because you can do that thing where you can go into a practice session but can't race in it. Um, but I did that with every single race. Michigan, especially because before I bought all the tracks, Michigan was the only one on the schedule that I had, so I would just race around it, race around it, race around it for hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to Bristol. I think like 2 or 3 times before I actually went to the practice session and then the race. And I was there for 5 or 6 hours just trying to get around. It was I was still struggling, but I thought I had the car under control.
Yeah.
At
And
that
so
point.
what's going to be really cool for you is next season and later on this year, when you come back to a track for the first time that you've already raced at before. And the way your mind works, you had that week where you practiced really intense and you were working on learning it for the first time and stuff like that, and then you get a break from it for like 6 months. That first time you come back to one of those tracks that you're not seeing for the first time, and you hop on there and it just comes right back, you're like, oh my gosh, because your brain's still working on processing and sorting stuff out through that whole off period. So you'll come back on and you'll go. It might take a couple laps, but it's like you're going to just pick up right where you left off and continue to improve. That's going to be a really cool feeling, and that's there are a number of things that I think iRacing does so well, but the biggest thing is that because even though I know it's not perfect, I understand. It's like the guys who race for real will point out all kinds of ways in which iRacing is inaccurate technically when compared to actual racing. However, what it does get right is that the cars drive and feel like cars. And that makes, even though there might be technical differences in the way that different things work with setups and things like that, things you can do in the game that would never work in real life and stuff like that, the fact that the cars drive like cars and the challenge is difficult enough that it requires a lot of car control to really become good at it. Having things like that as a racing fan, I always knew and understood in theory about how laps and experience matter and how getting comfortable with the car and stuff like that and a driver feeling comfortable and why that all is important. I understood intellectually and theoretically why that was important, but actually getting to, as a race fan, getting to experience that firsthand has made me appreciate and enjoy watching racing with such a greater depth of understanding that I never would have had without the sim there, to be able to do that. So that's been really cool for me.
My thing is that the competition is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Exactly. That's another thing. It's not, because when you've got AI, it's like you can set the AI down to whatever setting you can beat and then just, beat it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd rather beat real people. Then I know it's like there was no gimmick in that. I legitimately won that race. It can't be taken away.
My thing that I do now, whenever I race, a lot of people tell me to spectate drivers, but my thing is I will go out when they go and I'll drive behind them because I remember watching or listening to, I can't remember, the Dale Jr. download, and somebody was talking about. Oh wait, no, actually, it wasn't that. It was a interview with Jimmie Johnson, and he said he was behind Tony Stewart. And he watched him go around the track at Martinsville, and he said that's the whole reason he became so good at Martinsville because he watched Tony go around it. So
Yeah.
I'll watch like 5 or 6 different drivers. I'll get right behind them, and I'll take the exact same line, figure out whose was faster and whose was more consistent. And
Yeah, watching and learning is a big thing, and there's so with that for me, it's definitely that confidence of knowing what a fast line is, and then it just coming down to being a matter of, okay, now I know what I need to do to be fast. I just need to execute that, as opposed to trying to search and figure out for the right line. and not being sure if the reason that you're slow is execution or if you've just chosen the wrong line.
Yeah, I did that at really well actually. Rockingham. I cannot wait to go back there. I think I got that place figured out as much as I can.
Rockingham's fun, but that Rockingham is one of those tracks where as soon as you think you've figured it out,
it changes.
Well, either it changes or you're going to encounter someone else who just is half a second faster than you, and you'll have to figure out why. So yeah, back on gaming community. Like, how's your experience overall been with iRacing? What do you think they're doing well in community management?
Got a board of players.
I think I run into a lot of good people.
Thank you, Rachel.
Like,
I
run into a lot more good people than I do like angry people or people who are just willing to tear me up. I think everybody has that understanding in them, or at least most people do, that it's racing and not every race is going to be perfect.
And that is why I say it's like and the majority of the folks on there are pretty decent people. It's just you get a handful of bad apples. I think iRacing actually does a pretty good job with the way that they handle the protest system, the suspensions, and if something if it's a verbal thing, they don't ban you from the service. They just take your ability to communicate with other people. When you've demonstrated that you're not that you're not going to be responsible in handling your ability, that the privilege of being able to communicate freely and openly with other people in the game, that you're going to not handle that in a responsible manner, well, then they take your toy away. I think that that's a very fair way of doing it, and without that, we've seen how other games just descend into a toxic mess. Like, I remember doing online racing in both Forza Motorsport and Project Gotham Racing way back in the day, back when I was in college, and I'm talking about PGR 2 and Forza 1, by the way. Or
classics.
Yeah, I think Forza 1 was online. Yeah. But yeah, 1 out of 10 lobbies would be a good lobby. And once I remember it was like you'd bounce around from lobby to lobby to lobby trying to find a lobby that was just 8 guys who were just committed to wanting to hang out and race without having someone in there that was trying to wreck people, because there was no policing. The only regulation was that the admin of whoever was the host of the session could kick people, but that didn't fix a race being ruined. It didn't prevent that same person from joining. There wasn't really any meaningful action that you could take against someone back in the day, because Microsoft wasn't going to ban someone's gamer tag for something that they did in a game, unless like what they were doing was hardcore actual hacking type cheating.
Yeah.
Microsoft didn't do anything. So, iRacing taking serious, understanding that the quality of their product is directly tied to the quality of the racing, who's using the service, I think is really important. And look, obviously it could always be better, but I think that given a really given the scope and the difficulty of the task that iRacing is faced with, I think they do a pretty good job of fairly administering the service.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that should get a lot of credit for is I don't see a lot of, I don't even think you could, honestly, but like hacking or cheating or anything like that.
No, their anti-cheat software seems to be pretty good. They're without it, there would definitely, it's a game on, running on servers. There theoretically would be ways to hack into it if people had the desire and the intent. But yeah, it's pretty widespread. And like, having worked on games like Call of Duty and stuff like that, where, especially on PC, where, it was possible for people to use all manner of different types of like aim bots and things like that. and you would see it, and I don't want to say that everything on Call of Duty was tainted like that, but it wasn't difficult to find videos and examples, and you would encounter with some regularity in games. I remember online, if you're just hopping through random lobbies, it wasn't all that infrequent to encounter someone who was using an aimbot. If I've ever been in a race with someone using grip hacks, I haven't noticed it. I don't know. I've never been in a situation where I'm like, that guy's definitely cheating.
Yeah.
David Weishart in chat says that he's pretty sure there was a peak driver that got suspended for using a grip hack. If you had, David, if you don't mind, because that would be kind of interesting. I've always heard folks talk about griphack.exe and stuff like that in a joking manner in chat. I've never seen anyone use it. If there's an article or something like that, if someone wouldn't mind pulling that up, I would be very interested in seeing that story and possibly digging into a little bit if we have the time, because that would be interesting and fertile ground for conversation. But, iRacing, I think, does a pretty good job. And honestly, with the amount of investment that folks put into this, in terms of, how hard it is to Sailors AJ Henderson. I remember a few years about people using some sort of double clutch hack for the F1 Pro Series that used to run. Okay. And then obviously there's also at Bristol, there's the wall riding hack, and there are a couple other tracks that you can do that, which hopefully with the new damage system, that'll just kind of get rid of that.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
That new damage system is going to look cool. I just don't understand the mindset. Honestly, it's like,
how could you be proud of yourself? Like
that's what I'm saying. It's like the amount of money, even now, where it's $100,000 prize pool or it's like, is that amount of money really worth compromising your integrity? Because like, even if you never get caught, you cheated. Like, how is that worth it to you at the end of the day? Because you didn't get it honestly. I don't understand it. I've never understood that mindset. But yeah, I do think iRacing does a good job of policing that stuff, though. Clearly, because most of the race, even though you'll have bad races and you'll have guys who clearly either lose their temper or race folks dirty, they tend to be the exceptions rather than the rule in my experience. And even as bad a run as I've had this year, I still feel like on the balance that iRacing is far better than what I've experienced in other online racing titles.
For me, it's just all other games that I've played, really, because one of my other big games is Rainbow Six Siege, and let me tell you, there is a large toxic community, and there is a large hacking community in both of the categories.
Mm-hmm.
And they both go hand in hand. You'll find a hacker, 9 times out of 10, they're toxic.
Right. So I think part of it also plays into the level of investment you need for iRacing, as well as the exclusivity, because first off, all this racing gear isn't cheap, and iRacing requires a subscription, and you have to buy the cars and the tracks. There's more investment that you put into iRacing than in a $50 or $60 title that you can play with just a game controller or with your mouse and keyboard, right?
Yeah. So far, I between the two games, I've spent, I think, like maybe 2 or 3 times more than I have in Siege. And for Siege, it wasn't even to like play; it was just for like aesthetic stuff.
Mm-hmm. David can't find any article on his computer that his computer will allow him to look at because of the antivirus stuff. That is one of the things is that when, unfortunately for some of this stuff, you have to scrape the dregs of the internet. So I guess if anyone else is watching, if you find an article about a peak driver using grip hacks and the resulting penalties or anything like that, if you can find a safe link that has reliable information about this, post it in the comments below the video when this goes up on, if you're watching this on YouTube and we still haven't, if we don't end up talking about it later in the video, go ahead and post it in the comments or something like that. Or if someone can find it in chat later, we'll throw it in there. But yeah, I think that, and that's the other thing is that, for most folks, once you've invested the amount of time that it takes to work your way up the ladder in iRacing, up the license ranks, and to get a decent iRating to where you're in competitive splits, to have that taken away from you is a real and meaningful loss. So people aren't going to risk that, whereas if you're playing Rainbow Six, even if you're risking getting banned from Rainbow Six, and even if you get IP banned from Rainbow Six, okay, you can just go take your tricks over to Call of Duty. There's so many shooters where you can get a relatively similar competitive experience. If you're banned from iRacing,
there's nothing.
There is no substitute. Yeah, there is no other game. There is nothing else where you can get the same experience. So it by definition, it gives this more value, and the value of that is in and of itself a deterrent. So other game companies, all you have to do to get rid of cheaters is just make a better game.
Yeah, just make a game that's
that's so good that people actually care that they don't get banned from it, and that'll fix it all, right?
Yeah, that's that's why I love iRacing so much, though, because it's so unique. It's so incredibly realistic for what it is. I was actually listening to something that William Byron said. He said he found it a lot easier in a way. Mm-hmm. Let's put it like this: in a way, to actually race a real car than it is to race online. Not because of the physical toll, but the actual the ability to feel the car out. Unless you have a $multi-$1,000 setup that costs you upward towards $10,000, you're not going to get a real car feel to it. And I always thought that was interesting that he said that it was easier to race in real life than it is in iRacing.
Yeah, so in iRacing, you're in equal equipment. You can't be racing for a team that has more money and beat other drivers just on that. You've only got your driving ability to beat them with.
Whereas when you get into real life, I don't know what happened to Hendrick. I don't know why they fell off as hard as they did.
Dude, I've been watching racing for a while now. That happens. It
happened to Roush.
It happened to Roush, and Roush still hasn't recovered. They seem to have their arms wrapped around the new car, or around the 2019 package a little bit better. But Roush hasn't been to victory lane outside of Stenhouse winning a couple restrictor plate races 2 years ago in a long time. Not since Carl Edwards stopped driving for them. Carl Edwards back in 2013, and even then, that the decline had already started then. Because he won Bristol and he won a road course race. They were already way off on their 1.5 mile program, even in 2013, and 2012 they even started falling off a little bit. Obviously, back in 2011, they were competing for championships, and then they just fell right off. It was shocking how quickly that decline happened.
We talk about something real quick. Carl Edwards might be one of the most underappreciated drivers.
He was really good. I would say he's up there in the conversation with Mark Martin of best and most talented drivers to never win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, like, he was always incredible to watch.
Mm-hmm.
My heart about sank whenever I watched that 2016 race.
Oh, man. Well, especially, like, as a Carl Edwards fan, and this is why it's like, I actually remember I was watching that race, and I right before that restart, after he got it, and I regret to this day saying it because I feel like I might have been part of jinxing him. But after they got that pit stop and that, he comes out with it, leading the championship battle, I'm looking at that. I'm like, man, he's got it. He's been dominating the race. He's got it. I turn around and I'm like, I know where I'm putting the die cast. I always only get the 164 scale, but for him winning the championship, I was going to go big and get the 124 scale die cast. I'm like, I know exactly where it's going. And then the restart happens and it's gone. And my jaw, I was just, yep. That's the risk that you take when you're a fan, though, is the highs are very high and the lows are very low. Chris Lucky says NASCAR needs more road courses. Agree or disagree? Agree 100%.
Oh yeah,
1,000%. Especially because the current package that they're running right now, I don't like the splitter on oval stock cars. I think that oval stock cars are better suited to have a valence and also to not be riding on the bump stops, to have a little more play and less stiffness in the suspension. I think that race cars in general are more interesting to watch when there is more play and liveliness and bounce in the suspension.
Yeah.
It makes them more difficult to drive. It makes them more entertaining to watch when they're moving around more, when you can see that there's more body roll and that they're moving around more and that they're actually riding on the springs and moving on the springs. I think that's more interesting visually to watch, even if it's a single file parade, even if they're not able to be side by side all the time. It's more interesting watching them just drive around the track when there's more movement in the vehicle. That said, where this year's package I think is really strong, and where the Gen 6 car and the Gen 5 car have been really strong, is I think this year's package in particular, the 2019 package, because they've been able to use the tapered spacer to get away from the restrictor plate at Daytona and Talladega. I think they've gotten back to a package with the higher drag and with the tapered spacer that makes the racing at those two tracks better. So I think that whatever they change when they go to the Gen 7 car or with a new if they bring in a new package in 2020, they should keep this or something similar to this. They should continue in this direction for Daytona and Talladega. And I also think that this style of car is very well suited to road course racing. I think that this package puts on a better show on road courses than previous iterations did. I think that if you go back and watch most of the road course racing in the 80s and the 90s, with a few exceptions, I think that there were some good road course battles that happened back in the earlier days of NASCAR. But I think that it makes sense because honestly, what they've done with these cars is that they've made it more similar to a touring car. The splitter is a convention that comes out of sports car and touring car racing. That's not a stock car thing. That's something that NASCAR pulled in from the touring car world. So it kind of makes sense that this car that's set up with a stiffer suspension and with the splitter puts on a really good show at road courses. So, like I said, I think they should definitely go for something different with I think they should definitely go for something different on the ovals. But I think that they should keep. I think that if they can, they should keep this package at the road courses, and I think they should keep something in the same direction with Daytona and Talladega.
Honestly, what they should do is they should run the Daytona road course instead of like doing the actual
I would
like
love
in
to see the
Speedway.
July Daytona race be at the road course as opposed to the Speedway.
Because I mean, like they get around there, like regular cars get around there quick.
Yeah, AJ Henderson brings up a good point though, is that the drivers are a big part of it, which is, you know, it used to be that the road course ringers used to come in and what's interesting is that the road course ringers would never come in and actually dominate the race, but there would only be like 2 or 3 of the actual NASCAR guys, and then the road course ringers would go up there and compete for a win with them, although the road course ringers never actually won them back in the day. But what did happen is that all the drivers have started taking road course racing a lot more seriously now. They didn't always drive trash cars. I mean, didn't Tommy Kendall came in and nearly won driving the number 42 car for Felix Sabates, which back in the day was actually a really good car. And Ron Fellows had, you know, one-offs for Hendrick and stuff like that that were really competitive too for a while. But yeah, I do think that the drivers getting better at road course racing has also played into it a lot. But I also think that I think it's a combination of both things. I think that the drivers getting better has played into it a lot, but also giving the drivers a more stable car that can be thrown into the corners with a little bit more aggression and that they can bang on the bumpers without getting it completely out of control. It's made road course racing more similar to short track racing, and I think that's made it a really good combination. It's just a good mix of things coming together that's made the road course racing really entertaining to watch. It's awesome.
See, my driver, I like to think he's pretty good at the road courses, but my boy is Martrex Jr. And to me, it seems like he's either up there in the front, about to win it, or coming second or third, or he's getting wrecked out. So
Truex has just gotten good at every aspect of the game, honestly. Like
yeah.
At this point, there isn't a style of track that he's weak on. He's just good.
Yeah, everybody they kind of like jump on me because they're like, "Oh, you only like Truex because of his 2017 season." I'm like, well,
2017 season was pretty impressive. I just gotta say.
Yeah, it wasn't that. Those trolls started coming out after or just before he won the championship. But funny story on why I chose Truex. I'm like, I wanted somebody who I wasn't like Junior or Tony Stewart or Kyle Busch, because everybody was like all those fans and they're all there. I'm like, I want somebody special. And forever for me was Greg Biffle.
Nice.
But then he retired or left or whatever happened to him, he just fell off. And I'm like, well, I need a new guy. So I'm like, who's kind of an underdog? I'm like, oh, and TJ.
Yeah, that's kind of how. So the way that I've always picked my driver is AJ Racing. Thanks for subscribing on the YouTube side. Appreciate that. The way that I've always picked my driver was my first guy was actually Bill Elliott. I was 4 years old or 3 years old when I first got into NASCAR. Bill Elliott was driving a red car. That was good enough for me. he drove the red one, and that old number 9 Coors, just like bright red on the front and white on them. That thing just looks so cool. So I picked him. And then my dad, found out that there was a driver in the series that was from St. Louis. And seemed to be a pretty good sport and stuff like that. It was Rusty Wallace. So being a St. Louis kid, I was like, all right, that's good enough for me, so I'll root for the local guy. And so I was a Rusty Wallace fan all growing up, whole career, all the way up until when he retired. And then when he retired, I'd already started following Carl Edwards as he was coming up a little bit. So I'd already kind of picked out Carl Edwards when he started out in the Truck Series as being another local guy who's from Missouri. It's like that was an easy pick as well. Local guy. We're gonna stick with the local guy. Root for the local guy. Plus, he did backflips off his car. Super cool.
Yeah, that was
so it's like
awesome.
You just kind of pick someone. But when Carl retired abruptly, I hadn't really prepared for having another guy to pick. I'd always liked Bubba Wallace, though, watching him come up in the Truck Series, personality, and it's just, I want more diversity in the sport. So in a sport that's all white dudes, the one black guy who's in there driving, I think that's cool. That when again, it's like, for me, it's the identity stuff and stuff like where it comes down to, it's like, that's not going to be a meaningful differentiating factor for me necessarily, in terms of if there's a real big different reason why I'm going to like someone else. You know what I'm saying? But all things being equal, if at that point when there really isn't much difference between anything else, well, then the diversity metric does become a meaningful reason to root for someone else. So, that plus, I mean, Bubba I just find to be a genuinely good dude, honest, kind of like a lot of the things we talked about earlier. Good, honest, funny, wears his heart on his sleeve, just all kinds of reasons to root for him. But that's the thing, is like, whenever I look for a new guy to root for, I will always look at the crop of either rookies or guys coming up. So I'll pick someone who's brand new. I'm not, and if there isn't anyone in that crop that I particularly want to root for, I'll probably root for one of the veterans or some. I was rooting for Dale Jr. the couple years before he retired after Carl Edwards, because I didn't have a driver in the Cup Series that really clicked. And that's the thing. It really is almost like getting into a relationship. It's like there's a chemistry there that either works or it doesn't.
See, with Bubba, I solely believe that he is a driver that has immense amount of talent, but is just held back by the equipment he's in.
Bubba?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's no lie that RPM is kind of struggling.
It's hard to gauge since they're a one-car operation, so it's really hard to evaluate how much of their struggles are the driver and are the car. And I'm saying that I'm saying that as a Bubba Wallace fan and someone who's rooting in every respect for him to do well. We've obviously seen flashes. We've seen what he can do in the trucks, and that he knows how to handle a race car in the trucks. We've seen him almost win races in the Xfinity Series, but he did get beat by his teammate Chris Buescher in the Xfinity Series a couple times, and was never quite able to win a race. But yeah, we don't know how good he could be theoretically in top tier equipment. We don't know how much of their struggles right now are him and his talent, how much are him and his inexperience, and how much are the car just being behind developmentally. I mean, the other thing is he's driving a Chevy, and all the Chevys have been off.
Struggling.
So, and RPM hasn't been putting really competitive stuff. When he stepped in to drive for Aric Almirola in the few races where Almirola had been out, my memory is that he did as well or better than what it seemed like, at least he did. He struggled in his first race, but each race he got progressively better. And by the time that Almirola came back in and took the seat back over, he was finishing as well or better than Almirola had done in the exact same equipment. That's the best comparison that we've really gotten, in my opinion, for a long time, in terms of how Bubba's driving ability stacks up side by side with someone in equal equipment. Yeah, the Chevys are back. At least Hendrick seems to be back, but I haven't seen a lot out of the other Chevy team. Well, no.
I think Chris Buescher's been doing a fantastic job.
That's what I was going to say. JTG Doherty all season has been up. Kurt Busch has been doing really well in the one car. Kyle Larson has been up there in the conversation in a few races, but has been struggling overall. I am not surprised by that, though. When they went to this package that's higher downforce, lower horsepower, which means it's going to be an overall tighter car to drive, I thought that Kyle Larson and Jimmie Johnson in particular, and back when I was doing the fantasy advice stuff, I was calling all through the season, I expected those two drivers in particular to struggle because those are drivers that have made their money on driving the car off of the right rear, getting that right rear out and driving that car off the right rear. That's tougher. That's not how a high downforce, low horsepower car is going to drive. So I'm not surprised to see the guys who are really good at driving that style of the car struggling.
Yeah, it kind of sucks for him though, because Kyle Larson he's probably one of the better drivers in the field, but his potential is being limited by this package this year.
It's just I just think that it's a package that doesn't suit his driving style. We saw when NASCAR first went to the car tomorrow back in 2008 and 2009. We saw Tony Stewart go through similar struggles for a number of years where it was just Tony was at the top of his game 2005, 2006, 2000, all through the mid 2000s. NASCAR goes to the new package. Tony fell off a cliff for a couple years.
He dropped like a rock.
Mm-hmm. And it's just that. It's like certain driving styles are better suited to certain packages than others.
I think there's been a lot of instances of that, though. Like, it's not that uncommon to see that. However, I believe one of the drivers who, had they been more consistent, kind of broke that a little bit. And that was Dale Jr. Even though his last couple of years were rough, everybody kind of seems to forget those 2014, 2015 seasons.
Well, and 2004, 2005, before DEI really folded in on itself, he was a championship threat in those years too.
And then I think his really biggest struggle was when he went to Hendrick, and then they moved over to the car of tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dale Jr. I do think that had things gone differently, his career may have been very different. I think that he definitely had the talent and ability to contend for and win championships. If he had his dad there running the organization and guiding that organization and managing, because I think when his dad was running, clearly he was building DEI into a major organization that was going to be able to contend for and win championships, and that without his leadership, that it spiraled and fell apart. So had his dad been there to run things, had he not had to deal with all the emotional and psychological difficulties of having lost his dad in the way that he did, and then also all the emotional and psychological stress that he went through with having what his dad. I think anyone who's fair-minded looking at it was clear that his dad had set that organization up and would have wanted that to transfer to Junior at some point.
Yeah, but it was just ripped out of his hands.
Exactly. So that was a whole lot to go with. And then looking at his stuff later in his career, you had, honestly, I think which we've seen happen with a number of drivers. Thankfully, in this era, we don't see it happen as often because they've made the cars and competition a whole lot safer. But we've had a lot of stuff, or what I think that was Junior's biggest problem later in his career is he got hurt bad, and we've seen throughout racing history a whole lot of examples where drivers who get hurt badly don't always come back from that injury as the same driver. And I think that those head injuries really affected Dale Jr. Later in his career and made him a very different driver. But you're right, 2014, 2015, he looked like he was going to make a resurgence and be a contender in those. And those were 2 really good seasons. So it was so nice to see him at the end of his career come back and really show, that he could still do it and finish his career on largely a high note.
I think his biggest thing is that he just wanted to finish, alive. I think that was his big thing, because like you said, he had been hurt really badly after that test. Mm-hmm. So I think he was just really wanting to. Well, and it was a number.
If you go back and look at like and this is another thing that it's just a reality of racing, is that some of it's driving ability, some of it's luck, but for whatever reason, there are always certain drivers who have more than their fair share of really bad hard hits than others. And if you go back, it's like people forget, even early in his career, you go back when he was driving the number 8 Budweiser car, there were some just grinding, awful, bone-crunching hits that Junior took all through his career. He definitely was one of those guys who had more than his fair share of just bad angle, bad impacts. And that was just it's just unfortunate. Because I do think that ended up limiting his potential.
The thing to me that kind of really did not help Junior is everybody just had to point out that he wasn't his father.
Of course not.
I know that got to him, and I know it it hurt him a lot.
Well, right, and you've got an impossible legacy to try to live up to, and
I mean, there's only ever a handful of drivers who broke winning 50 races, but 26 races isn't luck. You don't just luck out and win 26 races. You definitely need a little bit of skill there. So I think Junior was he was a good driver. There was just some times where it wasn't good for him personally. So, but a lot can be said. Some people can deal with it better, though.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that this isn't like excuses for him. These are actual legitimate problems that he faced.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the greatest comeback stories so far in recent memories is Aric Almirola after he took that massive hit. Was that Kansas? I think it was at Kansas.
That was right.
It was 2017.
Yeah. 2017 Kansas, it was Joey Logano had a brake rotor break, I think, or something like that. That turned him into Danica. I'm pretty sure that was Kansas. That was the Kansas spring race, yeah. The one we just did, 2 years ago this past weekend.
But, he was hurt bad. And look at what he's doing so far. He's not the best at SHR, but he is definitely 110% better than where he was.
No, he's a different driver at SHR. It's definitely been cool to see Aric Almirola really come into his own.
I think that's my favorite thing about SHR is they change drivers. I mean, look at Daniel Suárez. I think his attitude's changed a little bit.
They give folks good equipment. Yeah, sometimes just changing, sometimes just being in a different shop changes things. You look at Joey Logano when he was at Gibbs driving Tony Stewart's car versus Joey Logano at Penske. And Gibbs was putting good cars on the track at the time. Gibbs is still putting good cars on the track. Penske was putting good cars on the track. Penske's still putting good cars on the track. So it wasn't necessarily an upgrade in equipment. It was just a different environment, better chemistry, better fit.
Yeah, and that's why everybody was kind of a little worried when Truex went to the 19 because they saw how or at least they thought how badly the 19 car was getting treated. I'm like, there's been some kind of suspicious activity with removing the car chiefs and changing crew chiefs and all that, but I don't think it's going to be as big as a struggle because Truex has already had a lot of experience working, if not close, actually with Joe Gibbs and his equipment.
Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of Truex's team that from Furniture Row that moved over, same crew chief and so like that. So I'm not surprised to see Truex doing well in that transition at all. I think it's been pretty I'm not surprised that it's been a pretty smooth transition for him.
Yeah, but no, I think definitely Suárez's attitude has changed though.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of it has to do with being around Tony.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's my big highlight of this year. I can't get over it. I don't know why. It still gives me like goosebumps and chills and kind of riles me up a little bit. But when I wouldn't say he absolutely like went out and beat up Michael McDowell, but he definitely
dropped him. Yeah, that was that was the big fight of the year, and I think it's just a shame that, you know, I don't mind seeing that kind of stuff, and honestly, like I want to see guys, if they're actually mad at each other for when they feel like they were actually raced unfairly, go out and show that, you know, that drama does make for good entertainment. I don't want to see it turn into some kind of manufactured WWE thing, but when guys are genuinely upset with each other because they have a genuine passion for the thing, I don't mind seeing that. The only thing that I thought was a shame about that was that it happened in qualifying, because NASCAR had tried a qualifying procedure that just flat out didn't work.
Yeah. I think that whole beginning of the year with the qualifying was just a joke.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we saw some drivers. I know for sure Truex wasn't up there a lot, and I know that was the beginning of me starting to realize that there was a problem. Because Truex doesn't always like qualify like too well, but he never really consistently gets 27th. So that was kind of like my first eye opener. Obviously, being a Truex fan, but then we saw some drivers like Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin and a lot of the SHR guys kind of just like fall back and like, yeah, something's not right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been a pretty big believer in Suárez's talent. I know that a lot of people were bailing on him right away when his first couple seasons didn't go too well. It's like, the guy's young. He won a championship in the Xfinity Series. He can drive a race car. You know, clearly the things weren't working out at Joe Gibbs. I wasn't particularly surprised that he was the one of those four drivers to end up, to go when they had to make room for Truex. And I wasn't surprised at all that they made room for Truex. He was the 2017 champion. So, but I'm not super surprised to see him continuing to improve and do well in his Stewart Haas ride.
Yeah. Outside of the fact that none of them have won a race, I think there is a lot of talent at that organization right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, I think, together as an organization, there's something missing that they don't have that Joe Gibbs and Penske have right now.
Yeah. Yeah. For whatever reason, this particular car, the 2019 package, Stewart Haas seems to be a tick off. And yeah, I don't know.
But I would like to say it's pretty impressive though that Kevin Harvick's third in the points though, without a win.
Yeah. Dr. Jeff says, I blame Toyota for not spreading the wealth past JGR. What other Toyota teams are there outside of JGR at this point?
Well, there's Levine or Levin.
Levin Family Race, which was supposed to become the new Furniture Row. That has not materialized yet, although with DiBenedetto,
it's a hit or miss.
Well, no, I like what I was going to say is I expected them to perform well. I'm kind of a believer in DiBenedetto's talent. We've seen flashes of it, especially in the short tracks and at Bristol and stuff like that. I'm still waiting. I'm withholding judgment. I'm not going to rush to judgment this early in the process, as they're still trying to get up to speed. But I still can. It does seem clear that 95 team is not the new Furniture Row Racing, though. I don't think that there's the level of the same level of affiliation with Joe Gibbs Racing that the Furniture Row team had. But it's not the same team yet.
Yeah.
But what other? Are there other Toyota teams? If like,
there's just a bunch of back markers, really.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I don't know what wealth Toyota is gonna spread to those teams per se. Other than I don't know. It's not like Toyota's given Joe Gibbs Racing charity. They pay very well for that.
This year, there's literally 2 teams.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, yeah. There's Joe Gibbs Racing for Toyota. There's Penske, and then Stewart Haas is still going to be in the conversation, and it looks like Hendrick is coming up. So we're actually shaping up as we go into the summer months. We're shaping up to have a really interesting battle through the summer months and into the championship. Dr. Jeff says, my point is that Toyota won't go out and seek out other teams.
They have that extreme concepts.
I'm just not sure that like it's fair to lay all of that at the doorstep of Toyota.
To be fair, though, a lot of people
well they got SHR, but SHR was with Chevy. SHR is never going to drive Toyota. Tony Stewart has been adamant about that. That was why he left Joe Gibbs Racing when they made the switch to Toyota, is that Tony Stewart will not drive anything that is not an American-made car and will not run anything that's not. So, like, he's off. Hendrick's not going to go away from Chevy, so Hendrick's off the table. Hendrick does Chevy dealerships. Hendrick's bound to Chevy, so they're not available. I don't think Penske would be open to doing a non-American make. He's going to be either a Ford or a Chevy guy, or if Dodge comes back, they might go Dodge, but Penske would never run Toyotas. So there are just there isn't. I think that right now of the top teams, I can't picture anyone outside of Joe Gibbs Racing running Toyotas. You might be able to convince JTG Doherty to come over from Chevy.
Ganassi might be a little bit of a push.
Ganassi, possibly. That is a possibility. And I'm sure that if Ganassi went to Toyota, or if there was any interest there, that Toyota would be interested in pursuing that. But there has to be at least some interest on the other side of that coin, So on the flip side, it's like right now Ganassi is steadily improving and seems to be doing really well with the current affiliation that they have with Chevy. So Toyota would have to come up with a lucrative offer to convince Ganassi that they would run even better with a Toyota affiliation than a Chevy affiliation, because no matter what, Ganassi is going to be the number 2 team. They're not going to be the number 1 team at Chevy, because the number 1 team at Chevy is Hendrick. Ganassi would not be the number 1 team at Ford, because the number 1 and 2 teams, the co-number 1 teams at Ford, are Penske and SHR. And the Ford, the way that alliance works is really interesting, actually. So over at Toyota, you would be the number 2 team at Toyota. Maybe you could work yourself into a co-number 1 deal, but the thing is like, I don't see Ganassi in their current position as number 2 behind the 4-team stable at Chevy of Hendrick, being in a meaningfully different position if they go over and are the number 2 team behind the 4-team stable of Gibbs. Each manufacturer has a major 4-team stable. It's Gibbs at Toyota, it's SHR at Ford, and it's Hendrick at Chevy. And then behind that, there are a couple different 2 and 3 teams and stuff like that. But Ganassi's really the only meaningful team that isn't one of those big 4-car operations. The blinking thing in the background is the iFlag. iRacingIFlag.com. You can use my promo code Theodore to get a 15% discount. They also make a pit board that's really cool and puts up some useful info on your screen.
The only team I could possibly see seriously pursuing the Toyota as a manufacturer is maybe Front Row.
Yeah, but Front Row's a backmarker team. Yeah, you could maybe pull them away from Ford, but they've got a pretty strong affiliation with Ford, and yeah, I don't know. There are definitely some teams, and that's the thing is, if Toyota wants to invest more money into a team like Front Row Motorsports, they could probably help Front Row get out of the back of the field. But again, it's not a charity. Toyota already has a stable of 4 teams that can compete and win for championships, and they're going to put all those their top resources are going to go to the teams that they think can put Toyota into the championship for at the end of the season. Chevy's putting their resources primarily into Hendrick, and then the teams that have an affiliation with Hendrick are going to get the benefit from that. So, you've got Ganassi's kind of number 2 to that, and then Ford. Ford actually has an embarrassment. They've got 6 cars that can really meaningfully compete for the championship. Chevy kind of has 6 that can meaningfully compete for a championship, and Toyota has 4 to play with. Toyota could probably benefit from adding a couple more to that, but the thing is that when Ford went after Stewart Haas Racing, Ford was able to target and go after a team that when they made the switch from Chevy to Ford, and that was a big deal, that they were able to meaningfully increase their stable with a team that was ready to compete for championships right there. And that was the one team that was, because Chevy had 2 big 4-car stables. So now that imbalance no longer exists. I don't know where, that's what I'm saying. I don't know where there is a team that Toyota could find to try to build up and add more. Especially with continued talks that we keep hearing where NASCAR is talking about trying to add a 4th manufacturer at some point. I don't see it being likely in the future that Toyota is going to expand. That's just my thoughts on it, and also, if I'm Toyota, if I'm sitting there in Toyota, I've got a 4-team stable that's capable of competing for championships. The amount of investment that it would take to try to help one of the other teams come up to a championship level versus the return that I'm going to get in that investment in terms of how many more Toyotas that it says are going to help me set that, like how many more Toyotas I'm going to sell at the dealerships because I now have 6 or 8 cars that can compete for the championship rather than 4. I'm not sure that the money works out for that. You know what I mean?
I think Toyota's approach is a little bit more different than like other manufacturers. After I listened to again the Dale Jr. download with Jeffrey on it, he said that Toyota actually was more like accepting and open towards him and actually gave him opportunities and chances to use their equipment. So I think they target more drivers than they do teams.
Right. And they do have one of the strongest driver development programs, what I think Dr. Jeff is coming back to on this and referring to, which is that Toyota continues to develop talent that comes up through Kyle Busch Motorsports and through the Gibbs program and the Xfinity Series. And then because they've only got 4 good cars at the Cup level, they don't have anywhere to put them, so they lose a Daniel Suárez to Stewart Haas. and now they're sitting there with a Christopher Bell, and it's like, well, where are they going to put Christopher Bell when Gibbs is full? That is a good point.
But what I feel like they really need to do is, right now, Levi needs to find its pace, find its rhythm, because the whole comparing it with Furniture Row, people forget that Furniture Row was starting to become a very competitive team out of 2015.
Right, they were. The Furniture Row, when they were truly a single car operation before the Gibbs affiliation, was much more competitive than Levine Family Racing has ever been. They had won a race. They won the Southern 500 with Regan Smith driving. So they had won a race.
They won with Truex too. They won Pocono.
Right. Yeah, Truex had won races with them before they made the shift to Toyota. So yeah, you're right. Furniture Row was in a much different spot when they started the affiliation with Joe Gibbs Racing than Levine Family Racing was. That being said, I haven't even seen yet to this point the meaningful uptick in performance outside of the Daytona 500 from Levine Family Racing that we had hoped we were going to see.
Yeah, I think it'll take some time.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to get used to this whole new car, first of all, because everybody's struggling with this new package, and then they need to get used to the whole change in manufacturers. And I mean, look at how long it took SHR to become very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the end of 2017, after they changed manufacturers, that they became very competitive, and that was only with Kevin Harvick.
Yeah, they did. Right, the switch to Ford did take. Honestly, I was pretty impressed with SHR at how quick they were able to be competitive with that switch. How quickly they turned around from Chevy to being competitive with Ford. I actually thought it would take them longer. And it was also really impressive. It's been impressive this year how well Ford has done with the new Mustang, especially when you look back and you see how much Chevy struggled at getting the new Camaro up and off the ground.
I can't really point my finger on what could be holding Chevy back so far.
You know, if it were obvious to us, they would have figured it out already.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is whatever it is, and it does seem like they're finally starting to hit their stride a little bit and starting to figure things out, but whatever it is, or whatever combination of things it is, it's not something that's just, oh, we changed this one thing and all of a sudden we've got it fixed. The other thing is that you might be finding things and improving things with the balance of your cars, and getting, even if you're getting better, your competition's getting better too. So it's a moving target the whole time. You know, if you get to where your competition was 6 months ago, well, that's fine, but your competition is not what they were 6 months ago. They are 6 months better. So you're still, you're chasing that. That's why when you get behind, that's what happened to Roush. They got behind, and even though they were gaining ground and improving, they were still behind in development when compared to everyone else. So as they got better, the other teams got better, and so that gap just kind of remained. When you do fall behind, it's very, very, very difficult to dig yourself out of that hole.
I was talking to this guy, I forget his name, but this is about a year ago. He said he was a body hanger for JTG, and he said one of Chevy's biggest problems right now is two things. First off, Chevy fields a lot of cars. They field a lot more cars. So you're going to see a lot more cars at the tail of the field that are Chevy, not because because Chevy's terrible, but just because there's just a more range of, at least it was 2 or 3 years ago. Now since we've had teams start switching around, it's been different. But I mean, you got teams like Starcom, Premium, Rick Ware whenever he wants to run a Chevy or a Ford. It depends on who's in the car. But another thing is they said that Hendrick was really their top performers, and he was their 2016 championship run. It was how much money they put into Jimmie Johnson winning that championship is what really hurt him.
Because, so you're saying it Hendrick had hurt them, or Chevy had hurt them? How much money they dumped into the 2016
Hendrick.
Run for Johnson? Okay.
Hendrick themselves.
Right, because that hurt them in terms of they weren't able to start development on working on the Camaro for 2017.
He wasn't really too specific, but it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that does make some sense. If you've got a shot at the championship and you're investing a whole lot into trying to win it for 2016, and you're getting a new car. Well, now because the Camaro is a 2018. So basically they fell off in 2017 because they put so much energy into 2016 that they weren't developing things for 2017.
Yeah, because
that makes some sense.
Jimmie Johnson had those 3 wins and then he just fell off.
Right. Yeah. They were strong early in 2017 and then kind of fell apart, and it became the Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it does make sense.
Yeah. So let's transition again. Something that I like to talk about that I feel like gets discussed in a whole lot of different ways is the whole freedom of speech issue. That's super prominent. And well, I guess it's an issue in NASCAR, and it's an issue in online platforms and in society in general, just from a number of different angles. Something I have to deal with as someone who has a channel and stuff like that too. So, multifaceted and clearly really complex. So, I guess let's start with it with NASCAR, and then we'll kind of transition. We got a half hour left before I got to go watch the hockey game. But Kyle Busch's comments recently about the car and NASCAR's decisions to penalize, not penalize, regulate, not regulate, and their responses to what drivers have been saying about the new package. What are your thoughts on that?
I believe I'm not a big Kyle Busch fan, so coming from me is a definitely harder thing to say. But I believe that NASCAR does kind of come down harder on Kyle Busch, but that's because he's such a bigger influencer role model. The thing, though, with this last thing that he had to say is he's absolutely right. And how they handled it was kind of, I would say, on the lines, not okay. However you look at it, you could find some things that were correct, but then some things that weren't correct. Because if we take a look back, what was it, 11, 12 years ago, that Bristol race, when they first brought out that COT, and he won the race, but he said that the car was terrible. Mm-hmm. How right was he about that car?
He's 100% right. And I think he's right on this. And if I remember correctly, even though he used a swear word to the media, which NASCAR has usually been really consistent on, they didn't penalize him for that, which I thought that he was going to get penalized because he dropped an F-bomb in an interview to someone in the media. NASCAR usually fines you for that. They step back from fining drivers for what was said on the radio, which I think was the right move. You can't fine them for what they say over team radios. You tune into that at your own peril as a fan. If you don't want to hear colorful language, don't tune into the team radios, because that's them. They need to be given a certain ability to have that. Now, I could see where there would be limits in terms of. I think there is a line that could be crossed where I do think that a penalty for something that was said over team radio could be warranted, but I think that you draw that line at a different place than where you draw the line for what you're saying to the media. That being, so I do think that NASCAR does need to allow drivers to freely speak their mind about the direction of the sport. But at the same time, drivers have to understand and I want to say, I think Kyle Busch has been right and correct in his criticizing of the package.
He's basically saying what everybody wants to say.
I share his criticisms of the package. I wish more drivers would speak out for it. It is a little bit curious that they don't that they're not as vocal, although I do understand it. So, for one, you have a role. Part of your role as a driver is to be somewhat of an ambassador to the sport. When you speak, you have a measure and a degree of influence to bring people in or push people away from the sport. If you're telling and sharing publicly to the world that that the racing is garbage, that the cars are garbage, you're probably going to discourage people from watching. It's going to discourage eyeballs from tuning in. So there is and that's the thing that for me that is always interesting about the freedom of speech issue is that people have to understand that it is a double-edged sword. You do have, and I think it's a wonderful thing that we have in this country, with a couple obvious exceptions that I think make sense about direct threats of violence and libelous and slanderous statements, that you basically do have the freedom to say pretty much whatever you want without fear of retribution from the government, which is it's less unique now at this present time in the world, but when the First Amendment was drafted into the Constitution, that was a very radical change and revolutionary departure from what most people had lived under in the world up to that point. And I think that is a good thing and super appropriate. But what people have to understand is that with great power does come great responsibility. You have now the power to say whatever you want, but what I think gets lost in the discussion a lot of times is that you're now accountable and responsible for everything that you say. So you don't, the accountability for what you say doesn't go away just because the government has given you the freedom to say whatever you want. You now have the responsibility that you're actually held account. You can't just fall back on and say, well, it was legal, so that's the end of the discussion. No, because the flip side of that is everyone else now also has the freedom to have an opinion about what you've chosen to say, how you've chosen to use this right of speech. And that's kind of the other side of the coin, I think, is that what I see happen a lot is people say things that are offensive, either whether they're speaking off the cuff or deliberately saying things to provoke, and when they do provoke a reaction with it, they make it seem like that the person is not allowed to have any reaction for response. It's like, no, dude, you can say what you want, and the government's not going to come in here and arrest you for it. That's fine, but you can't tell me how to feel about what you just said, or you can't tell me what my opinion should be about what you just said. Thoughts on that before continuing?
I believe that it's very important that we have the option. But like you said, it's the whole double-edged sword thing. There's a lot of times. I'm actually going to use Formula One as a good example for this because they are probably the best at showing this. Saying something terrible about a current package or a car, it may be true, but you got to remember, like, you got to represent yourself in a very formal and correct manner, or else nobody's going to want to root or cheer or even watch that team or even sport.
Mm-hmm.
So, like with Formula One, we saw the only person I think that ever got away with it was Niki Lauda, and it was kind of exaggerated at Rush, but it was still true.
Lauda wasn't the only one, but Lauda was very good at being pointed in criticizing aspects of the sport. Spike, you need to watch Rush. That's all I'll say on that.
That's an amazing movie.
That is, I think, the best movie about racing. There are a couple others that are in that discussion, but that's the best racing movie, I think. That one and Le Mans with Paul Newman, I think. I think it's Paul Newman in that one.
But I mean,
yeah, no.
You get to the point where, like, you gotta It goes towards companies. So like if you work for Walmart and here we'll do this. I am a chef at Michael Alberini's.
Okay.
There are some times where like some of the dishes that we are told to make can be very, I don't know if that's going to work. That's kind of not acceptable. Not because it's like unhealthy. It's just not a good combo of.
You don't agree with the creative direction that it's going in, but as a chef that works for the company, that's supposed to be an internal discussion rather than an external one.
Yeah, I can't go on Facebook or Twitter or any sort of social media platform absolutely dogging on my company that I'm under, or else.
You can't do it without expecting some manner of retribution from said company.
However,
because unless that company has given you a guarantee that you can say whatever you want about them in your contract, and that's the thing, is that you do, every time you sign a contract, you are signing away some portion of your right to say whatever you want about that particular entity that you're engaging in a contract with. Usually that's part of the deal.
And like there's been multiple, because I've worked in a couple of restaurants, but there's been like some restaurants where there are some things that they did where I was like, I don't know if that's legal and correct, but if I still went out and said those things, I risked the loss of my job.
Yeah. Well, and so, continuing with that, where a lot of this has come into play is with the proliferation of social media platforms and the way that social media platforms have largely become the public square. Because, the reality is that so much of how we communicate with one another now is via through platforms that are owned and solely operated by private companies. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, all of these different social media platforms are owned and operated by private companies, and they all have different terms of service agreements that, let's be real, most of us just click right past them without reading them carefully. But when you sign up to use a particular platform, you are agreeing to the terms of service as defined by that. You're signing a contract, even though you're not actually writing your name. You are agreeing to a contract. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't find out about the actual terms of that contract until they violate them and get their account suspended or banned for doing things that are not a violation of their First Amendment right to free speech necessarily, but are a violation of the terms of service on those particular platforms.
I see it as
and I'm not necessarily saying that it's a good thing that either that the platforms are mediating and interfering with the discussion in their speech in a certain way. What I'm saying is that as long as the platform is they're on legally firm and sound ground, as long as they are consistent in the enforcement of their own terms of service. They have the right to set those terms of service however they want, and we have the right to say, I agree to those terms of service and will abide by them in exchange for using your platform, or I don't agree and I won't use your service.
This is see, that's where I kind of like. I think that's where NASCAR kind of did Kyle Busch wrong himself. Real quick though, did he actually get fined for that?
He didn't get fined for dropping the F-bomb, which I was actually surprised by. I thought that he was going to get a fine specifically because he dropped an F-bomb. I was actually kind of surprised that he didn't. But I think that the reason that he didn't is NASCAR knew that the fine would be perceived as not being about the language, being about criticizing NASCAR. And
Yeah.
I think that NASCAR has kind of backed themselves into a little bit of a corner because of statements that they made that honestly, and like giving NASCAR all the benefits of the doubt when I forget it, I don't know his name, but the guy who was the VP of something or other with NASCAR said that Kyle Busch should be careful in how he talks because he makes a living doing this, and
Steve
he,
Fox or something like that.
something like that. But like, so when that comment was made, I'm giving him all the benefits of the doubt to say, I really think that his intent in saying that was, Brian Mills, thanks for the Twitch Prime sub, really appreciate that. I really think that his intent in saying that was to say, Agamemnon, leave it. Drop that. That's not a toy. Come here. Was to say that, Aggie, drop it. Thank you. Was to say that, hey, sorry about that. Aggie, come here. Leave that alone. Was to say that the reason why you're making money driving a race car is because other people buy into the idea that what you're doing is difficult to do. It's not something that anyone can do. If you tell them that what you're doing is not difficult, then you are jeopardizing your ability to continue making money doing it because you've told everyone, hey guys, this is not that difficult, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
You are having a detrimental impact on your future ability to continue to make the millions of dollars that you make right now for doing that thing. It came across as a veiled threat of, hey, Kyle, you shouldn't say that because NASCAR can just take your ability to make money with NASCAR away if we so choose. I don't think that was his intent, but because of the way that he phrased it, it came off that way. And I'm not sure that there was really a good way to say it, so he probably shouldn't have said it. And this is, again, it's like, yeah, you're free to say that if you want to, but you're not free from accountability for saying that. That is true of what Kyle Busch said, and that's true of what Steve Bell said. So it basically what it means is, hey, say whatever you want, but make sure that you're really willing to die on that hill and stand by that argument if you're going to say pretty much anything. Make sure that you're when you say things, either be willing to walk it back when someone counters with an argument that's actually valid, or be a little bit more careful in how you phrase things and what you're going to say so that you are not saying things that are easily misunderstood.
Kyle Busch definitely has a better he has a better how do I put it? He's got a better chance of not getting in trouble or losing a whole lot because of where he stands in terms of NASCAR, because even if he did say that, you would be out of your mind to put him out of a car.
He's a champion, and everyone knows how good he is at driving a race car, so he does have a little bit more authority to speak from than someone who's running 25th every week. Absolutely. 100% agree. You earn your platform.
That's why I think it's like, if anybody was supposed to say that, it would have been Kyle Busch, because Kyle Busch has such the power to say it.
I mean, there are a few other guys. I would say that Jimmie Johnson has that clout, and Kevin Harvick has clout in terms of being leaders in the garage area. So he's not the only one who could say that. But I do think that, because of the amount of respect that he has, and he's willing to, he's willing to take up the mantle of being the voice of the garage area. So, yeah, there are other drivers who could say it, who I think would have credibility if they said it. Kyle Busch has chosen to step up to the plate and take that role on his shoulders himself.
My big thing right now, though, is it's sort of like the NASCAR community reacting to it, because as I looked, there was a lot of mixed emotions about it. and a lot of them were biased towards the fact that not everybody likes Kyle Busch.
Yep.
But I think so far, this has probably been one of the things that he has said that everybody could probably get on and agree with.
Yeah. I mean, this package is really unpopular with the wides. It's not unpopular with everyone. There are people who like it, who I disagree with for liking it, but there are definitely not. It's not 100% unanimous that this package is hated by the fan base. I don't like it. There are a lot of people who don't like it, but I'm not going to sit here and try to claim that everyone hates it because that's not true. But Kyle Busch, I do think that there is a lot of overlap with people who have historically disliked Kyle Busch and people who don't like this package who are now begrudgingly, saying, well, I don't hate the guy as much as I used to because Kyle Busch is using his platform to say things that they agree with.
I think what we need to do right now is we need to kind of I don't believe that any package for the Gen 6 car will ever be everybody's cup of tea. I think everybody's going to have something that they want to say about it. Mm-hmm. I think, though, we need to step back and kind of just let NASCAR develop this Gen 7 car. Because as we saw, even though it took I think they started testing the car of tomorrow in 2004 and 2005, and it didn't debut until 2007. Even with that amount of time behind them, which isn't a whole lot to begin with, that car still came out pretty bad. Yeah. I think we really need to just kind of step back and let NASCAR develop.
I'm ready to scrap this thing. I want to see the Gen 7 car on track next week. Let's just start testing it right now.
What was that car that did the X3 or something like that they were looking at a couple of years ago?
Yeah, and I've talked about a couple reasons why I don't necessarily like the idea of the X3 because I feel like I feel like it looks in a lot of ways just like further iteration on the Gen 6 car. I don't necessarily think that it addresses the same problems. Because it still has a splitter, even though they cut out the gaping hole in the middle of it. I feel like you're still going to have teams running right on the ground of the thing, and they'll. One of the immediate ways that I think of that they could try to exploit that is drop the cars so low that they scrape the track for the first half of the race and grind out some of that splitter so that gap is smaller at the end of the race than they are at the beginning. I think that I want to see NASCAR do away with the splitter entirely and go back to an air dam and put in rules dictating shock packages in place to make it so that teams cannot get the car physically all the way down to the ground.
There needs to be more suspension play with it.
Yeah,
I feel like
I'm not a fan of coil bound setups where they're just riding on the bump stops. I don't like the way that coil-bound cars look going around a racetrack. I also think that they made a mistake in flattening the sides out of the car out so much. That's where we started getting into this thing where teams were able to generate a whole lot of side force with a really flat surface area on the side of the car. I think that the race cars raced better and drove better and looked better when they were more curved. That's my opinion. I understand. It's like I don't work on these things. I don't know all the different technical stuff. I know what I like as a fan, but that's also my personal taste and my opinion, and that's heavily influenced by what I saw on the track when I was growing up. And people are always going to have a bias towards that rose-colored glasses vision of what their childhood was like. Yeah, so I understand that.
And let's be honest with ourselves. It's to the point, I hear a lot of people, especially on Facebook, but everybody's saying, just let them start buying cars off the showroom floor and taking them and turning them into race cars. I'm like, I think we're past that point. I think the manufacturers that are in NASCAR right now are just too far from that. There's just too many things that would go into. Basically, you would get almost something that looked like a Gen 6, except it would be asymmetrical and it wouldn't have those weird curves. It would just, it wouldn't be, the way to go, because then you'll start getting those like teams that'll do some other stuff to kind of help them. But the cars are all different shapes, they're all different sizes, they would all weigh differently, and even if you did put the same engine in them, that weight to power ratio and the mass and the whole way that those cars would flow through the air is just it's just too far away from being able to pick it up off the showroom floor.
Mm-hmm.
There would be it would take years to figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that we're gonna get back to that win on Sunday, sell on Monday type deal. I don't know that is how your average consumer is making decisions about which car they're going to get anymore.
Yeah.
You know, back when that was the thing, back in the 50s and 60s, you didn't have Consumer Reports and Road and Track and Top Gear and YouTube videos of guys going to dealerships and test driving cars and talking about what they liked and didn't like about them, and YouTube videos of mechanics going in depth about why certain makes of cars and engine configurations are more stable and more reliable than other ones. You know, consumers have so much more information that is useful and more practical to what's actually going to be important to them in when they buy a car than they used to. That, you know, how one stacks up next to another in a race is no longer a meaningful data point the way that it used to be. You know, racing has evolved into something different. It's evolved into a more pure form of sport. And I think that's, you know, that there's opportunity in that, and there's a good thing. But in order to really kind of embrace that and move forward with that, you know, the racing pedigree of a car and the cool factor of that racing pedigree still does have some metric and some significance to a point. But that can't be what NASCAR as an organization hangs their hat on, which is that it's the testing and the proving ground for Chevy versus Ford versus Toyota, right? That's no longer the thing or a big thing that's going to bring eyeballs to your sport. Is people aren't tuning into NASCAR and deciding, well, I'm thinking about buying a Camaro or a Mustang, but I want to see which one wins Michigan first before I make that decision. It's like,
yeah,
I challenge you to find me one person that actually thinks that. I'm waiting to see who wins Daytona this year, and then I'll buy that one. I don't buy it. And if you say it, I don't believe you.
What I would like to see happen, and I could be 110% wrong with this, and it would be tough because of the way that the sponsoring and the funds are looking for the actual NASCAR sanctioning body. But maybe if like some of these other smaller teams were funded to race a little bit closer to mid-pack, that would be nice to see. Because everybody gets... I see it split 50-50 a lot. Everybody wants either the car's close, but then you would get those people like, no, it's too close. That's not showing true talent. I want the car separated. So then they'll do that. But then there's that other half that's like, no, we want them close. So it'll never be like, you know, fit for everybody. But I think a big way to improve on whatever package we're running is help those smaller teams stay competitive with the middle pack. That way we're not getting cars 6 or 7 laps down in a run.
That gets talked about a lot in Formula One. Is that right now Mercedes is way out front, and you know Ferrari and Red Bull this year kind of fighting over 1 and 2. Last year it was Mercedes and Ferrari fighting over 1 and 2, or Ferrari and Red Bull are fighting over 2 and 3. Last year it was Mercedes versus Ferrari, and then everyone else. You know, with Red Bull kind of on their own in the 3rd spot. But what gets talked about a lot in Formula One, and what is really interesting to watch, is that midfield battle the battle from
Formula
7th.
1.5.
Yeah, but basically the battle from like 7th to 14th or 18th. Basically everyone that isn't Williams. Sorry, Williams, you're slow. But like basically everyone that isn't Williams and isn't one of the top 3 teams, that battle between them in the midfield is insane. It's super intense to watch. It's really entertaining. And fascinating to watch. And I think that NASCAR, even if NASCAR does have a couple of really dominant teams, the battle between those, as long as it's not just one guy every week, as long as you have a few key players that are in the fight throughout, you've at least got something to watch. And then, if you have, but if you have a robust and competitive midfield battle to focus on, that's what's interesting. And I do think that that's some of, and listen, I'm make this point, and then I'm going to give you a chance to say your piece, and then we'll wrap up here. But what we used to have that I thought was really interesting was that we've lost. And I'm saying this as someone who's a big fan of the playoff system, and I really liked the playoffs. I like the playoff format. I think it's very interesting to watch. I like the elimination rounds. I think there's a lot of drama, and it makes the championship battle more interesting to watch. One of the things that has been lost in that I remember following back in the 90s as a kid is that the battle for the top 5, the battle for the top 10 spots, guys who are mid-pack guys who are not competing for the championship, but, going for top 3, top 5, top 10, top 20 in points, those battles are much less. Those are covered a whole lot less because everything has become about the championship. So everything else is kind of pushed back and not focused on. I remember that finishing in the top 10 in particular used to be really significant because you'd get on the stage at the end in the awards banquet. And that was a big deal. Guys who would do that every year, and you'd have guys who would go on streaks, and it would be talked about that they were on a streak of top 10 finishes, and that would be a big deal. So we've lost a little bit of that. We've lost a little bit of the focus on that, with everything being about the championship. And I've shifted, even though I like the playoffs, I've shifted to where I think that it would probably be a good idea for NASCAR to go back to a straight points format.
I think what we should do is kind of like remove like the round of 4, really. It just made like the round of 8, like the last long stretch, the actual
make it a 4-race battle between the final 8 guys.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think either do knockout and you go all the way out and have the big championship race at the end of the season, or you just go back to just doing a straight points deal.
The only thing, I guess it happened quite a bit of times, but like not a whole lot. But the only thing I'm just kind of scared if we'd ever go back to the normal point system is like the championship being won by the third to last race of the season.
That's going to happen sometimes. It happens in F1. It's fine. The thing that would happen with that though is that you'd go into the last race of the season, and like what happens is the last couple races kind of end up being a celebration of the accomplishment that team's made, but you shift focus to the midfield battles because okay, so maybe the battle for the championship isn't interesting this year, but maybe the battle for who finishes 10th is super close, and so you start focusing on that at the race at Atlanta, or you just have a couple races where there isn't any implication for the championship, but you just focus on the race. It wasn't only so I do want to in chat. Really, it was only Kenseth's championship that wasn't that close. That's not true. Kenseth was the only one that walked away from the field and made it really clear that you could win a championship under the old system without winning a race, because he only won one race that season. It was the second race of the season, and he locked up the championship before the final race, having only won one. Jeff Gordon, when he won 13 races in 1998, had it locked up 2 races before there. He was mathematically the champion 2 races before the end of the season, which means that he was realistically the champion by, like, August. Like, guys would, even though guys would mathematically clinch, like, 1 race or 2 races before, realistically they had the championship locked up in those seasons months out, because they had accumulated such a big lead that it was pretty clear that unless the wheels just literally fell off their car in the last couple months, no one was going to catch them, because every week they're consistently running and finishing so well that without a couple bad weeks in a row that their competition really capitalizes on, they're not going to get there. Gordon in 98, Gordon in 97. Actually, if you look back at all those championship battles, Kenseth was the one that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because he only won 1 race, and he literally did just do it with just consistent top 5, top 10 every single week. And the fans got pretty vocal about complaining about the fact that he had made it clear that you could win a championship under that format without winning a race. But in previous seasons, I'm trying to think, 2001, I don't think was super close with Jeff Gordon winning it. 2000 was, I think, Bobby Labonte. 99 with Dale Jarrett, he pretty well walked away from it. 96 was a pretty close battle down to the wire, the one that Terry Labonte won. Jeff Gordon's championships in 97 and 98, not super close. 1994, Dale Earnhardt basically locked it up. I think did lock it up before the final race at Atlanta. 93, it wasn't locked up, but it was like Earnhardt had to finish, I think, 20th or better. Rusty had won 10 races that season, dominated led the most laps, won the race going away at Atlanta, but because at least it did go down to the final race in 93. 92 was obviously legendary, but 92 was such a memorable thing because it was so rare for a truly close points battle to come all the way down to the last race.
Tony Stewart's 02 championship, they were only like 30 some points apart, I think, what it was.
Tony Stewart in 02, but that was when Tony Stewart really got a reputation for being, he really had a reputation there for being a late charger, because he did not start out well that season, and he really rallied to come back late in 2002, if I remember correctly. And then I think it was the next year, 2003, when Kenseth just blew the doors off of everybody. Was it 03? Yeah, because 04 was the first year for the chase.
And that was Kurt Busch, who I think won that one.
Yes, he did. Kurt Busch, the first winner of the Nextel Cup Championship.
See, I think right now the competition is just close enough that we could probably get away with doing without the playoffs. But I would like to see something in place and just, make sure it's always still going to be a good, tight championship race.
There's no way to guarantee a good type championship without manufacturing it. That's just the reality. In any format, under any scenario, you're always going to have the possibility of one guy breaking himself away and separating from the pack. We don't pay too much attention to it, but let me just, for argument's sake, look at it right now. This year we would have a pretty darn close points battle going on that would actually be super interesting between Joey Logano and Kyle Busch. They're separated by 9 points right now, but it's just those two guys. The next guy behind them, Kevin Harvick, is 38 points back, and Chase Elliott in fourth is 55 back. So already Chase Elliott is a full race behind Joey Logano. That's not over, but, and then Brad Keselowski at 57 back. Once you get back to Denny Hamlin at 6th place, 74 points out, this far into the season, if you're almost 2 races back, you're basically done. Oh, that's right. Derek is right. Sterling Marlin did have the points lead in 2002 before the injury. Yeah. But, yeah, like, I do, this year, especially, like, a championship that goes all the way down between 2 rivals like Joey Logano and Kyle Busch, I think that'd be pretty interesting to watch, personally. And it would also be interesting to see if some of the other guys could come back into it. Let me see. I'm going to look and see real quick if I can go back to 2018 and see what it was after 26 races. But while I do that, do you have any final thoughts? Any shout-outs, anything that you want to say as we wrap up here? Because I got to wrap up and go watch the Blues game.
Well, if anybody's interested, I do stream on Twitch. Not that often, maybe once a week. It's Demi_OUS, and I also have a Twitter. You're gonna love this. It is Dr. Brown Downtown.
What's the story behind that one?
So I was out eating with my really good friend John. I've known this kid for a while, and my original siege name was Eat You I Must, because my YouTube's I Will Eat You. And that was already taken for some god-awful reason. So I'm like, well, what's something interesting? And John's this amazing character who can think of weird things and express them in weird ways. He goes, well, make a reference about you pooping your pants. So I'm like, why? He said, I don't know, I said so do it. So we sat there for about 2 or 3 hours eating food, trying to make a name, and that's just what we came up with.
Interesting.
The doctor comes from, it's kind of a tag that him and I have, because he's in his Discord's like Dr. Gloom or something like that. And I just threw the doctor in front of there. Just to kind of like, be there, I guess. But it's not that interesting of a story, but it's a weird one.
Gotcha. Okay, so here we go. This isn't at race 26, but this is last year's points, 2018 NASCAR points. If we were doing no stage points and no playoffs, Kyle Busch would have finished the season with 1,055 points. Kevin Harvick would have been second with 983, which means that we would have gone into the final race at Homestead already with Kyle Busch having the championship in hand. Just,
but I mean,
for what it's worth, let me see. 2017 without the playoffs, I think would have been a really boring, just grand slam win. Yeah, Truex would have done the same thing. He might have clinched it like 2 races in advance.
The only thing that like kind of frustrates me is, I mean, Joey Logano definitely won the championship. I wouldn't go as far as to say he didn't deserve it, but I definitely think if any 2 drivers were more deserving of that championship, it would have been Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, because let's talk about
they had better seasons, I agree.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that it's a different measurement now. I agree with, like, I can't say that the guy who wins Homestead and wins the championship under this format is undeserving. I would say that it's definitely the champion. It means something different. It's no longer about the season-long achievement. It's about it's a measurement of how that team shows up and prepares when all the chips are on the line. So I do need to get going, as has been pointed out in chat. My pooch is really, he needs his dinner, I think, more than anything else. And needs to go outside. He's very restless. I got to go watch the game. Thank you very much for joining me on this, man. Really appreciate you. you've already given. I'm going to let you go through your Twitch and Twitter. Twitch.tv/Demi_OUS. Twitter is Dr. Brown Downtown. For me, it's twitch.tv/John_A_Theodore. And youtube.com/John Theodore. And Twitter is John_A_Theodore as well. So thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Hope you had a good time.
It's been pretty fun.
Definitely been fun, man.
I'm going to send you that Twitch link of that guy I was talking about earlier.
All right. Good deal. And if you have it, actually, I'd be curious to see the message that he sent you. But yeah, for sure thing. I won't publicly out him or anything like that. I'll keep it confidential. I'm just curious. So thank you very much, and you have a good night. Peace out.
You too, dude. Peace.